Hey guys, Nick Mock 007 here, and today I'm going to talk about building a custom regulator. So this is a stainless steel Matheson 3810, and the first step when you get your regulator is to take it apart, which is what I'm doing right now. Now, a lot of this video I'm going to fast forward through because you don't need to see me taking the whole thing apart. Quite honestly, that's awfully boring. So as I skip through it, I'll try to highlight a couple of things. But basically, take off the gauges, take off any inlet and outlets to the regulator, and get all of it cleaned up. You see how there's stuff on the threads here? I don't know if it was some kind of Loctite type thing or Teflon tape or something like that. But anyways, take everything off and get it cleaned up. So for my regulator, I chose to use Swagelok, hopefully I'm saying that right, parts, and I went with an all stainless steel build. Now, some people probably will not go to the trouble of building their own regulator, but for me, I kind of enjoy doing these kinds of things, and two, it allowed me to do an all stainless steel build, which one, I just like the look of stainless steel better, to be quite honest, but two, it's also a more durable metal and will last to corrosive things, and CO2 is acidic, as we all know, and can corrode brass over time, though quite honestly, if you have a brass regulator and it's running fine, I wouldn't go out of your way to switch it to all stainless steel. But if this goes right, this should outlast, well, my entire lifetime. There's really no reason why the stainless steel should ever go bad. So these are all the fittings that I used for my build, including the needle valve. And I will put a list of everything that I used. I went ahead and used all stainless steel from the adapter to the CO2 cylinder, and all the fittings throughout. So the first thing, and again I won't make you watch all of this, but the first thing that you want to do is Teflon tape all of these connections. Now it's important to Teflon tape it in the right direction, and by that I mean go with the threads so that when you put it on, and I'll demonstrate the correct direction, and so that when you put it on, screw it into whatever fitting you're screwing into, it goes with the tape and doesn't start to unravel it. So I will not subject you to all of that, but essentially you've got to get all of these connections Teflon taped. Now when you're doing the Teflon tape, really you just need 2 or 3 wraps around. You don't have to go nuts. You're just trying to get a good connection so that when you tighten down these threads, the tape sort of fills any little sort of microscopic or very small gaps that might be between the thread of the connections. So you don't have to go nuts with it, just 2 or 3 wraps around, and that's good. Just make sure you're going in the right direction. So this is what it looks like, and I chose to use nylon washers here. This is what the stainless steel CGA 320 connection will look like. Again, the nice thing about building your own regulator is that each piece, you know exactly where it goes into the system, how it works, and if anything breaks, you will be able to fix it. So it's a really nice thing. And if you get a good stainless steel dual stage regulator, and if you're interested, I can sort of talk about the differences between single stage and dual stage regulators. It should really last a very long time, and you should not have any problems. It would be very difficult to break a good quality dual stage stainless steel regulator. So as you start to put the regulator together, once you've taken it all apart and gotten all the pieces cleaned out, you've gotten your connections Teflon tape, you want to make sure that you get them in tight. Now you don't want to go nuts and over tighten everything. You'll be able to do a pressure test later and make sure there are no leaking fittings. But the point is, get everything nice and snug. You can always go back and tighten some things up later. So it takes a little bit of practice to figure out how tight is tight enough, and so it's just a thing you'll have to sort of get used to. But get some wrenches, and if you have closed end wrenches, it can just help. But sometimes I had to switch to the open ends of the wrenches. But if you have the closed end kinds of wrenches, it can help protect the fittings for when you have to disconnect them in the future. So mid-stage, this is what the regulator looks like so far. Make sure you're keeping the in and out, and they're labeled correct, but so far that's what I've got. Next step will be to put on the solenoid. Now I use the Burkert 6011 all stainless steel build solenoid, and see how it's labeled P and A? So the pressure comes in from the P side and goes out through the A side. So that's very important. The solenoid will not work correctly if you install it in the reverse. Now, if you need to reverse it, there is a way to open up the solenoid and actually flip the fitting around inside, but make sure you're going in the right direction. So far we've got the inlet, the CGA 320, a straight fitting, an elbow connection, and then into the solenoid. So again, sort of mid-build, this is the progress. Now, as you're going along, it can be helpful to mock up the fittings to just make sure you know what you're doing, make sure you've got the room underneath your cabinet if things are tight, and also just make sure, what you envisioned in your head is actually working out. So this is me sort of test fitting the needle valve, just making sure I've got everything connecting right. Here's just a look at it from another angle. You can see that it's starting to take shape. You can see where the gas will come in, and you can see where it will go through that solenoid, and everything is working well so far. So at this point you can now see that I have got the needle valve installed on the regulator. I'll try to get a better shot of that. There you go. There's the needle valve right there, and almost done here with this build. It's actually taken quite a bit of time to get it all put together, and this is edited down, but the point is it's actually starting to take shape. So now this was one of the most expensive pieces of the whole build, but super important in protecting your regulator. So as I get this box open, and it's shipped in its own little box like this, it is a stainless steel check valve, which I will show you in a second. If you're interested, here's the part number, but again, I'll list all these part numbers in the description. So of course, for those of you who don't know, the check valve keeps air only going one way, so if water or anything were to start pushing back down towards the regulator, it stops it. So it's just sort of a one-way valve. Now, this is almost done at this point, so here is what it looks like. The stainless steel regulator. I have the pressure gauges, the inlet and the outlet gauges mocked up. They're not tightened down, but you can start to see what the whole thing will look like. So I'm very pleased with it so far, and really liking the look of the stainless steel, and just the sense of doing it myself and knowing what each one of these little pieces does. This is just a look at it from the back as I get ready to finish up putting it together. Now at this point it's almost done, so what I'm going to show you is it's very easy to do. I don't really know anything about regulators before I started this, so that's where you put the pressure in, and that's where you put the pressure out gauges. See, it's all marked for you. Now the nice thing is if you get them confused, you'll take a look at these gauges, as I will try to hold them still and get a better, try not to do it in the reflection, but sorry about that. But if you'll look, one of them goes up to 3,000 psi and the other went up to just a couple hundred psi. And here, I'll show you them together. There you go, that one went up to 200 psi. So the point is, the pressure in is the one that goes up to 3,000, and the pressure out is the psi that goes up to 200. Because of course it's a regulator, and what it's doing is regulating the pressure. So high pressure from your CO2 cylinder or tank, and then lower pressure going out to through all this tubing and solenoid and eventually to your diffuser. Alright, so this is really what the regulator looks like when it's all done. The only thing that I have not done is connect the tubing to the CO2 diffuser, but the point is, let me kind of give you a quick tour of the regulator as I've got it put together. And I'll try to give you some different angles and let you see what it looks like. Obviously, this is from the front, and got everything all tightened down now. This is what it looks like sort of eye level, and you can see the different level of pressures from in and out. Now here's a look at it from one side, from where the needle valve is right there. and then it goes from the needle valve to the check valve to a tubing adapter. The tubing will come right out of there, and I'll attach a bubble counter elsewhere in the system. Just a quick look from the back. Not all that different or exciting, but just letting you see what it looks like. And then finally from the remaining side that we have not looked at, from where it will connect to the CO2 cylinder. So this thing is bloody heavy. I didn't actually weigh it, but it's a really heavy, solid device. That was one thing that I noticed when I picked it up. Now, the other thing that I'll do is I will give some quick measurements so you know roughly what a regulator. Now, all regulators will be slightly different, but if it's a dual stage regulator, it should be somewhat similar. So that works out to about 9 inches, give or take, maybe about 8.5. And then height is right about 7, maybe a hair over 7, but it's also at a little bit of an angle, so maybe a little over 7 inches. And then from front to back, it is right at about 7.5 inches, and like I'm pointing to that because off angle it's a little bit hard to see, but pretty close to 7 to 7.5 inches. Thank you very much for watching the whole thing, and please comment, rate, and subscribe. It helps me a ton. Thanks.